Hi everyone, it's Stacey Holland and thank you so much for choosing to watch the show. While the old wives' tale that a woman can expect to lose a tooth for every baby is fortunately not true. However, it is true that a woman's body will divert nutrients to her unborn child, leaving her depleted of essential vitamins and nutrients. Therefore, it's extremely important that pregnant women make sure that they get all the nutrients their bodies need for both their and their baby's optimum health. And the best two ladies I could think of to help us with advice on this topic are nutritional therapist Nikki Robertson and midwife Rueda Muller. Thank you so much for joining us. A very interesting topic. I'm going to start with pre-pregnancy and let's actually look at preconception. If you want to start preparing for it, I mean, many women, okay, we find out that, we're pregnant, what do we do? But if someone does want to plan for it, how far in advance should they start prepping their bodies? Who wants to take it? Nikki.
As soon as you start even considering getting pregnant, you've got to start looking after your health. And for me, the best thing to do is to slowly and very in a very controlled manner start a detoxification process, because we cannot escape the toxicity in the environment. We cannot escape pesticides and toxicity in food. There's no such thing as 100% organic diet, and for the liver to cope and for as little to be transferred to the fetus eventually, you want to be as healthy as possible, and detoxification is a really good way to start. You can't do that when you're pregnant. So it's something that one should really do prior to conceiving, and not to do it alone. Don't think that you've got to go on green juices and smoothies for months on end, because that's not how you detox. Detoxification is a science. There is a very specific methodology to it to make sure that it's comfortable and it works properly. Not everybody effectively detoxifies. The liver is quite complicated. So you need guidance, and that is probably your most important thing to do when you consider
And
it.
mom and dad should be doing
Absolutely
it,
both. It's not just the not just the mother.
Because a lot of times when you're trying to conceive, we find out that there's also a male factor as well as a female factor when we're investigating reasons for non-conception. So be healthy. The detox we always start. I'm sure Nikki will discuss a lot about the folate and folic acid, that we start already pre-conception and not only when they're pregnant. One of the common things that we look at is the health before the pregnancy will also affect the common ailments in the pregnancy itself. So the mom needs to control, the mom that to be needs to control her weight or her BMI as well, because that will also have an influence, and that together with that, it comes from the nutrition that she's on. We increase a lot of the folic acid. We always talk about well-balanced diets, which Nikki is going to chat to us about, because everyone wants to know what's a well-balanced diet. And the dad as well, the dad-to-be needs to cut down on alcohol, cut down on the smoking, maintain nutrition, and also exercise. Use that in conjunction with each other to be healthy in order to conceive.
Okay, so now mom's conceived. What should she start changing up? Rueda just mentioned folate and folic acid. People get confused. How do you know which one you should be consuming, amounts that you should be consuming?
Yes, look, folic acid is a synthetic manufactured form of vitamin B that's made in a factory, where your folate comes from food. So you want to get folate, and not just food sources, but you must be supplementing that as well with a really reputable brand of folate. And you need pretty high doses. A lot of people don't methylate, or they don't break down these B vitamins efficiently, so they just don't even touch base or work. But where you've got something called 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate, which is a bioavailable form of folate, and it's widely available, it's not expensive, and that is probably one of your most important supplements to be taking, alongside your green vegetables, as pesticide free as possible, as organic as you can possibly get. But what a lot of us don't really realize is that it is so important that everything you put in your mouth becomes your child. Those cells are built on your food, because that's how they form. And if those cells aren't getting a good variety of proteins, good quality carbs, lots of fiber, healthy fats, and lots of fat, because the brain needs fats to develop efficiently, your child is going to end up with anything from very minor to major issues once it's born. And this is not something to play with. It is your absolute responsibility to be very, very particular about what you do and do not put in your mouth.
So I've seen a couple of women have a glass of wine or champagne. I've seen some women smoke during their pregnancies. And sometimes the responses I get, without judging, just asking a question, is, look at my other children, they're fine. Help paint a picture of what you do in preconception and during your pregnancy, and that sometimes you only find out how that affected your child 5 years in, 6 years in, or when they're only 10, 12 years old. Let's talk about why you need to prepare beforehand and during so that you don't deal with challenges further down the line.
I like the way that you said that, because a lot of people, it doesn't show in the pregnancy. There's very few that do show in the pregnancy. So at times they have a glass of wine, or and we say it's okay, but then how much is okay, and what's the alcohol content in it per glass? So it differs from glass to glass. The same thing with smoking. So one of the things that it does in the pregnancy, without a doubt, is it constricts the vessels, not only in the client themselves, but also in the babies and the placenta. That constricted vessels now decrease the amount of oxygen that the baby receives. So generally babies are tinier. They mothers usually give birth and say, but you know, my baby is crying, and we say, okay, it's probably a colic baby. But many of those babies are also experiencing withdrawal symptoms. So they're withdrawing from the nicotine that the mother has had, or they're drawing from the alcohol. So they have those alcohol withdrawal symptoms or nicotine withdrawal symptoms. And as a mom, you don't recognize that that's actually withdrawal. You just think that the baby is irritable. Those babies generally grow up, have ADHD symptoms where the child is not concentrating. So that is depicted later on in the life. With regard to folic and folate as well, we want that to increase in the initial stages of the pregnancy, because that is responsible for sealing the spine or for closing that spine. So it's so important that is in the system when the baby's cells are growing and as the baby is developed. So everything that they intake, and I love the way Nikki has said it, is what the baby is what the baby becomes, because it is, and we think it's just one, but it's not one. It's the content and the amount that is infused through the body into a little human being.
There's just so much that you're playing with that you're not aware of, because if you take genetic predispositions that you may not be aware of, it's like playing Russian roulette with your child, actually.
You can literally turn off and turn on genetic SNPs based on what you eat and your stress levels and your environment. You can turn on that child's predisposition to disease or switch it off. That is a massive responsibility, and because human beings have just been procreating for hundreds or thousands of years, we don't really think about it. It's just a natural process. But then, you know, you've got to decide, do you want your child to thrive, or do you just want them to survive? And personally, I don't think that's even a question. Any mother would want the best for their child, but they don't marry up the fact that what they're doing is becoming their child. And it's, you know, it's a lot of, when you just don't want to take on that responsibility, or you don't want to even put your head there, because it's massive, and that induces stress in and of itself. But when it goes to even caffeine, there have been tests done where they're looking at a baby's heartbeat, and just monitoring the baby's heartbeat and the mother's heartbeat, and when that mom has a cup of coffee, you can see that baby's heartbeat start to increase.
And it's a tiny heartbeat fluttering at that rate.
As that coffee or that caffeine is being ingested, it's directly influencing that child. Now, that baby is 1/10 of the weight of the mom. So if coffee gives you a little bit of a buzz, imagine what it's doing to this tiny little being. The same for alcohol, the same with sugar, the same with nicotine. It's not fair. It's not like it can regulate what's going on or make a choice what's coming down the tube, and that becomes a problem, a real problem later on in childhood.
Funny enough, I read an article about caffeine during pregnancy, and when the baby is an adult, their inability to cope with stress, how they're starting to link that back. Because of that fluttering, it's stress on the body, and the baby doesn't know how to actually, you know, regulate that. Exactly. So there are a lot of myths as well when it comes to a mom during pregnancy. she's not eating for two. Can we clarify that for people?
Absolutely. She's not eating for two. She's eating for one. And I think a lot of people use that as an excuse to get whatever they want. But yes, eat healthy and eat in short portions, little portions. We say your sugar levels might drop faster because you're supplying a little human being, but eat regularly and eat healthy. Don't overdo it or pack on an extra plate because you're doing it for two. That little one doesn't ingest the same way that you are.
Yeah, and it's more about quality than quantity, right, Nick?
Sure, and don't leave out a food group. This sort of, you've got to eat everything, you've got to eat a wide variety of foods, you've got to eat as much colour as possible because you're looking to get a wide variety of nutrients. Now, one of the reasons mothers crave is because something's missing. There's a key nutrient there's just not enough of, and a craving is a sign. It's not a signal that you need more food or that you don't have any self-control. It's your body's way of saying, I'm not getting everything I need. So you start looking, and then in pregnancy you find the weirdest cravings. These weird food combinations are your brain's way of saying, I'm on the hunt for something. I don't know what it is.
But it's mineral, it's a vitamin.
It's usually mineral and vitamin. It's usually something that builds bone structure, skeletal structure, brain structure. And then you go on the hunt and just weird cravings come up. And that is a sign that you need to really look at the variety of food you're eating. Variety of food makes our fetus or our baby immune. So it enables us to prevent allergies, to get a really robust immune system, especially where minerals are concerned. Children and adults across the board are really deficient in minerals. We just don't get enough. So those cravings are something to pay strict attention to, not just go out and eat sugar, but to go, I need a really good prenatal multivitamin.
Foods to avoid to prevent allergies or to deal with allergies.
There's two schools of thought there. One school of thought says don't eat any typical allergens, so eggs, nuts and fish. I don't agree at all, because what you're doing is teaching that the baby's body how to not become allergic. You're giving the sort of, you're inoculating, in other words. So it's creating an environment where the body knows how to deal with these things. Proper allergies are unavoidable. There are certain children and adults who will develop nut allergies, and that's that.
It's more intolerances we're trying to avoid.
It's more intolerances and even proper allergies going forward. So if you teach the immune system from as early as possible how to deal with these major allergens, I don't believe in leaving out any food group. You've got to teach that baby's immune system how to cope in the most safe way possible. And there's no safer way than in the womb, because it's micro amounts and it's learning just as it needs to learn. So it's more difficult down the line when that child has been born, and then you get fussy eaters and children who won't eat certain things and they develop sensitivities later.
But what about like gluten and wheat, for example?
Well, that's a contentious issue. So if I was advising somebody on pregnancy nutrition, I'd go very low gluten, because that's not going to directly impact the child. It's more the chemicals around that gluten that's going to affect the fetus.
So maybe look for sourdough options, stone ground options, organic flour options.
Better choices. So the gluten itself, because that's a protein, isn't going to directly influence or affect the fetus. It's going to affect the mother. And when the mother has leaky gut, she's not going to be well. She's not going to have a happy pregnancy. I'm
going to quickly move to post because we're running out of time. One of the questions that topics that I've seen coming up a lot of late for some reason is I just wasn't producing enough milk, so we had to go the formula route.
Yeah, it's a common, very common thing. So what we want for the clients to do, the mom, you've just given birth, your body needs to replenish on everything. So increase the fluid intake, increase the nutrient intake. There's also vitamins to take after birth as well, so you can have that. And people give formula. Each time you give a formula feed, you're having the milk you're giving the breast time to dry up. So as much as you're increasing your intake, you also need to stimulate breast secretion. So have a good diet, have a lot of fluid, have your vitamins and supplements. And if then there's nothing happening, then we'll seek for alternate options on ways to stimulating. But there's no reason for stopping breast milk.
Even if it's just a tiny amount, it's still better than nothing. So you do what you can, and then you can always supplement in addition with something else, but the more you can breastfeed, the better.
It appears that some of these moms feel pressured in that hospital environment, though, to immediately go switch to formula because they're not producing enough milk. And sometimes it feels like, as well, the baby's just a couple of days old. Is it really that critical?
No, you're never ever going to produce milk in the first 3 days.
Yeah.
So a note to every mum out there,
Yeah.
you're not going to have milk in the first 3 days, you're going to have colostrum. 1 teaspoon is enough for that initial feed. So a teaspoon of colostrum at the time is all your baby needs. The baby's tummy is very tiny. It's going to grow and it only needs 5 mils at a feed. In 3 days after that, it needs 15 mils at a time. So as the tummy gradually grows, your breast milk will increase.
Okay. Is there anything else that we haven't managed to squeeze in to pre, post, and during pregnancy? Anything that you can think of?
Yeah, a good probiotic for the mum
Yes.
would be really, really beneficial. And in my opinion, zinc and selenium are your 2 foundation minerals
Good
that
for the brain development
immune
of your baba.
system.
Yes. Yeah.
And to keep the mom healthy and not getting flus and colds during the pregnancy, that is such a good supplement to make sure you're getting.
Ladies, so informative. Thank you so much for coming to chat to us.